Coming up in this week's latest episode of Netball Unlocked, we look back on round 5 in the Super League as London Pulse maintain their 100% record at the top of the table. We take a look at the issues in the game with streaming foremost amongst it. We get stuck into the stats, and we're joined by a Super League legend in the shape of Lindsay Keable, whilst our Unlocked episode teases our interview with Vic Burgess, the Loughborough Lightning head coach. Welcome along, and Chloe, another day, another episode, and another new guest. We are building quite the team here at Unlocked. I'm delighted to say, as mentioned, we've got Super League royalty in the shape of Lindsay Keable alongside us. Lindsay, how are you, first of all?
I'm very well, thank you very much for having me, Paul and Chloe. It's very nice to be here. I thought these kind of podcast days were over for me, so it's very nice to touch base in the technical world and get out to the Netball Nation again.
Yeah, it's something we felt quite passionate about when we started. We wanted to make sure we kind of had voices from the game and those who've been around it for such a long time, especially because it's a brand new era. And I think as kind of, we hope, media transitions to cover this game sort of in a bit more detail, we want to hear from you guys. So we're delighted to have you on board, aren't we, Clay?
Yes, we are. And Lindsay, I mean, let's get stuck into it. What are your thoughts on 2.0 so far? How have you found the squads of 10, the super shots, timeouts, arenas?
Well, I think it's definitely a positive for the game. I do think it is definitely trajectory upwards for netball. And, you know, we're only kind of streamlining ourselves to be in line with Australia and New Zealand. I think, as you have mentioned in your previous podcasts, about the injury rate is quite alarming, having only 10 players. So is that a case of some people are playing far more than they would have done if they would have been in a squad of 12? Is that a result of... I don't think people are unfit. I think that's the beauty of having 10 in a squad. We now have contracts, which means that people are athletes and people are spending the time and effort to be full-time athletes. But I would be really interested in to sort of see the amount of sort of not career-ending, but season-ending injuries that a lot of athletes have sustained this year, if that is comparable with what's been happening. And, you know, you only look at SNN as well with some of the crazy injuries they've had over the past 2 years as well, or maybe perhaps there is a correlation. Maybe there's a bit more stress only being 10. I know from a coaching standpoint, they are really enjoying it because it's far less stressful getting 10 players on court rather than 12. So I do think that is a massive perk of, you know, coaches are having to have a lot more confidence in their bench. When things aren't working, you only have a very limited option of what you could do instead. But I think in general it is a positive. I'm not 100% sold on the super shot yet. I'm a bit old school. And I do think it was mistimed. I don't think certain teams have managed to prepare their squad or roster for that massive change. But maybe it'll grow on me. I don't know. It is only round 5, so...
Super shot is interesting. Obviously, we've spoken to a few. We've spoken to Claire Jones and we've spoken to Kerry Allman. So, like yourself, Kerry's a goalkeeper. How would you go about defending it? I think that's something Chloe and I are quite interested in. We're a bit nerdy on that front. How do you think? I think it will evolve, is my own opinion. But how would you go about maybe trying to defend that period of the game?
Well, it's funny, actually, myself and Fran Plum, who's another assistant coach to the Next Gen under Sharon, we were discussing actually, because we were saying for the first 10 minutes, your job is literally to try and force them out of the circle, trying to get them away from the post as much as possible to try and force those two point without the 2 points shots. And then almost in the last 5 minutes, you're trying to pin them to the post. You're trying to keep them only scoring 1 point or having to get yourself right on the edge of the circle to try and eliminate them getting into that 2 point area. So I think defenders are actually having to be smart and not rely on the fact they can do the same trick every single time for the whole quarter. So I do think it's better that the fact they're having to keep on their toes, and, you know, netball is a smart game and they're trying to keep up with that. It's interesting. I think it's definitely making the audience participation far more crucial and having to make players aware of time within a quarter as well. Because there's been a few times when the lights haven't changed colour or the buzzer hasn't sounded. So they should start recognising what's 10 minutes and how they should feel when it's a super short time. But yeah, defenders, we definitely have, well, we're always renowned for being the smartest players on the court anyway. So you're just showing it a bit better. So it's fine.
Do you think that there's a risk that the super shot sort of makes the like, because one of the great things I find about netball is one of the things I always used to describe it to people that don't know is like you can't do someone else's job, and everybody's job is therefore important. But there is now this emphasis on the shot. As a defender, like, how do you feel about that emphasis on that element of the game?
Well, I think this is where we kind of marry up with Fast Five. Fast Five is not a defender's game. It is all about the shooters. And as we know, if you look at personality-wise, there's not many shooters that don't really sort of fit in the sort of red sort of personality trait. They're quite princesses. They have quite a lot of needs and wants, and it's fine. And defenders are quite used to being like, oh, I know I've got to do like 77 turnovers and get at least one of them to goal. But I do think it has predominantly made it a very attacking game, and I think, as always, even in the normal game, like defenders always get pinned more, like us in the circle always get pinned more than those outside the circle, and I just think it highlights that a little bit more. But I have been quite surprised at how much more contesting is happening in the Super League this year, which may be as a result of those more injuries. I don't know, like, is that an element that's making people having to put their bodies far more on the line than we used to? Like, we all love a bit of argy-bargy and a bit of elbow here and there, but it's quite brutal out there. Some of the games I've been like it's a bit of a Wild West.
We're getting to that actually a little bit in the news section and coming up, but wanted to also to pick your brains a little bit, Lindsay, on what you're up to now, right? You're someone who I've interviewed a few times when I was back at Sky, and I know you do several things like most netballers. So what is it you're doing now? You told us that you are not retired in the first instance as well.
Yeah, so I'm still playing for one of my clubs, New Campbell, who I've paid for, I think I figured out for the past 17 years I've been playing for them. So I still play on a Sunday, still travel up and down the country. This time I just don't get paid for it. So it's a lot different. I'd say the quality is really good as well, because a lot of Super League players are having to still play Prem netball if they're not at university or playing Bucks. Then you need to get some form of quality netball in before you start in January. Like, the training program is amazing, and some of the programs that I've been a part of have been outstanding, but it's still not the same without getting that match play. And you can get friendlies, but they're normally sort of January time, and most people are missing their players because of international windows and stuff. So I think Prem's still got its place, and I do think it's really important that we do have a balance between having local talent and us oldies still playing and representing, as well as having new talent and current talent being able to get the most out of a British league. We don't really want to be losing players to other places, so that's really important. And I suppose just keeping up with my day job. I qualified as a teacher way back in 2010, and I've always been a dual athlete, a bit like Rachel Dunn and many other athletes, and Ebony Zero Brown. We've all had a sort of side hustle. I suppose netball's really our side hustle, but we've always done something else. And I think personally, for me, I don't think I would have lasted 16 seasons in Super League if I hadn't have been a teacher and had that moment of like being able to have both a career and sport. And netball wasn't everything. I teach religious studies. I'm head of netball, yes, but my day job is teaching about Christianity, Islam, and everything else in between. So it's very varied, and I think that's really been beneficial for my career. I think it is an option for some people still. I know Zara Everett is still dabbling in her lawyer's life as well as playing as a full-time athlete. So I do hope that people have the opportunity to keep it going or ticking over in the background, because I do think it's really important.
And you're involved at Pulse as well, as sort of you alluded to, like working with the next gen side of things.
Yeah, I had a year off, and Sam Bird is just far too persuasive, and she was like, come back, come and help. And so I try my best to try and fit it around school life. I'm a house mistress at Felsted School, so I'm really busy sort of 6 days or 7 days a week, and my school are really good at trying to allow me to at least go to training once a week, and then hopefully as many matches as possible. So over these holidays I've been to Worcester yesterday. I've been to Leeds. I think we've got a home match next week, so that's quite nice not to have to travel too far and back at the Copper Box. But yeah, I'm trying to give back to a sport that I have absolutely adored and had so many windows open for me that I'm, if I can give back or just give some other athlete a little bit of an inside of what I did, and hopefully it helps them, I'm blown away by it. It's just so good.
Paul, you do realise that now you're the only person perhaps on this call that's not quite educated in religious studies, because that was my degree, was theology and religious studies.
Really? See, there you go. You were just the same as Ricky Gervais as well, so
Yeah, to quote one of my favourite podcasts, shall we save it for the theology podcast, which is from a NFL podcast, which is kind of an ironic joke they have at the end of it. But we won't get into that. I'll just kind of happily say,
We'll just lower the
unfortunately,
brow again. Yeah,
yeah, I'll just lower the bar. That's where I'll come in.
Excellent. Well, Lindsay, we'll actually pick your brain a little bit about Next Gen because you're a perfect guest to be able to do that with. But you kind of actually sort of alluded to it, so we'll get to it. But it's about injuries really, and how it's become a bit of a subplot to the season. You were in Worcester yesterday, so you would have seen what happened to Gabby Marshall. What was your reaction to it when you saw it?
My first thing was just like, oh my gosh, you've just come back from a concussion and you've probably got another one, which is not great. And I do worry about, recovery and time and, not only your technical health, but mental health and all that sort of in between. And we heard it rather than necessarily saw it as well. Like we saw her go down, but the noise was just, quite chilling. And, she was wheeled off and putting her thumbprints in the air, which is great to see that she was okay. But, that's not good for sort of concussion injury. And you mentioned NFL earlier, like that in rugby, have got so much data now on concussion that we do really need to make sure we're taking it serious and the protocol is put in place and that Gabby is okay. But, these ladies are putting their bodies on the line. Like, Darcy came out for a fly, mistiming, misjudgment, clipped Gabby and, next thing you know, she's on the floor. So I think a similar thing happened with Jiva as well in Leeds in the previous round. And it's really hard because now I'm like, we have all this streaming, which again is a bit of an interesting topic. But if you look back at the moment of the collision, I'm not sure if it did. Umpires are obviously protecting the person who was injured, but at the same time, I'm like, how do you know it's malicious? It's not that the defenders are generally trying to go for that ball, and it's not the fact. I think it's different when you're not aware someone coming out and you see them on a blind side compared to actually you're both going for the ball, which they were both trying to get that ball. And where does it line of actually, why did Darcy warrant a 2-minute suspension when actually there was no maliciousness, I personally thought, in that one. And I don't think Jiva's one was that malicious either. And as a defender, I'm always going to back my defenders being like, no, like our intention is to win the ball. It's never to harm someone. It's never to take someone out. And that's not how people roll. So yeah, interesting. Yeah.
It's funny because I messaged you, Chloe, about this, didn't I? Because you said, did I see it? And I was actually covering the Masters. Unfortunately, not from Augusta, unfortunately, over the weekend. And I hadn't seen it. And I, without seeing it, said pretty much exactly what you've just said, Lindsay. It's like if we're upping the ante in terms of sort of the way the game's being played, and you're asking people, and those who know the game know actually hopefully this will please you, Lindsay, but it's more about winning ball and turning ball over than it actually is about scoring the goal. So I think if you're asking people to do that more, they are naturally, like in any sport, they are going to push boundaries a little bit more. So I do think, as much as we spoke about injuries and various different things, that does feel like something that's going to evolve as the season goes on. Chloe, what do you reckon?
Yeah, look, I think it was really quite dangerous. I think it was. I went back and I rewatched the Jiva incident, and I think when you watch Jiva, she comes over the top, sort of hooks round for the ball. To me, it looked like Gabby was in the air as Darcy came in, so I don't think that Darcy was ever going to get to the ball. Like the ball was already coming down into Marshall's hands, and actually, I don't think Marshall saw it coming, which is perhaps also another thing, like as you pointed out, Lindsay, about being blindsided by it. And I'm not an umpire, but I would have questioned whether that was actually not, when you have those rules in place about what it takes to get sent off, I would just have revisited that. And I think what's perhaps frustrating about the game is we do professionalize and we do sort of look at how we evolve. I think this is a perfect example of where we need like VAR or something to really assess that, like you would in another sport, because I've been able to look back at Jiva and I've been able to look back at Gabby's over and over again just to really be sure about what I'm saying here. And you can't do that as an umpire, especially when you have to then call the game because she's really out. Yeah, and like the players are, we're talking about a group of players that went from watching one horrific injury like 2 weeks before to then watching their teammate go down and not move and then be stretchered off. So I think that's quite exceptional circumstances, but it's what's happening in our new era. So another one where I think, let's be empowering these umpires and let's be keeping everybody safe as our athletes get stronger, get faster, get fitter. Because Darcy was on the move like quite quickly, so I don't know if she could have backed out of it. That's just, I guess, the game. But I think it's something that in any other sport would have been, if there was a review option, you would have reviewed that and looked at it back. But I guess the pause didn't really help. But the good news is we've had word from Birmingham that Marshall is out of hospital and no timeline yet on what might happen. As Lindsay pointed out, she's on her second concussion in 4 weeks, so that's pretty rubbish.
What do you think, Lindsay? It's because it's really a natural conversation, I think, because being able to kind of see both sides of the coin. I do think like the VAR thing is something I hate VAR, but it is something that, as a rule, like in certain sports, it does work quite well. Like I think it worked in the NFL, but not in the NBA.
I just think if you're going to have a third umpire, they are very helpful. They confirm centre passes and, they are there to communicate back to them at quarter time. Why can't we use them to check VAR? If we're going to pause the moment and take your umpire's time, and that has no limit to how long an umpire wants to take to keep everyone safe, why can't the third umpire be reviewing it back and being like, actually, yep, right call, no, wrong call, complete freak accident, whatever it is may be? I think there is a possibility for it to be able to be used in a better way than football, perhaps. I think football now, the refs have been so powerless, I think. I think they've gone to the point where they now overuse it because they're like, oh, if I get it wrong, I'm going to be booed. Whereas actually, if we can use it in the right appropriate moments, that, is it a case of, this person, it's off, that was uncalled for, or actually, having a second opinion in that moment would empower hopefully the umpire and the players and everything going, because it's not our intention to knock people out. That is definitely not what we're trying to do. And I'd still challenge the fact that you're saying Darcy should pull out, but the ball was in the air. It is 50-50 content, and I think if you didn't allow defenders to be able to do that, how else are they going to win ball? That that is their job to do. And I don't think it is the same as how you've interpreted it. I'd say I saw it as a very different, and in the moment it looked very different as well. So I just think, if we can use it in a positive way rather than in a way that's damaging to players, because at the same time, I've been on the receiving end of numerous calls. That means that, you're constantly told you're really dirty. And I'm like, have you not seen what's happening at the other end of the court? Like, can you not? Like, and we've sent video footage to be like, why is this person getting away with this by doing this? And why is it that our defenders aren't? And I think, we use video outside of a game and post matches and, like you say, to review. And, we've been using performance watching and things like that pretty much the whole of my career, like ever since I was in under 19s for England. Like, we've always watched the film, gone back, clipped stuff. So why can't we do that in an actual match now? We're at that stage where everything is streamed, and we had phenomenal efforts put in when it was COVID and we had the 2021 season, and I think that's still one of my favourite seasons, even though my team didn't particularly do very well. But it was great, the fact that we had all that footage and we were inside the studios, and we were able to rewatch those matches and watch every match. It grew the sport so much, and it grew everyone to be able to enjoy netball. And actually that's what it needs to be, even if the ratings are only 10,000, 20,000 a view. Like, I still think it's a great thing, and it can be used in a real positive way. So I think we need to help these poor umpires. They're not even paid to do this. It's not their job. Like, all of the athletes who are currently doing it, that's their job. And these poor umpires are still donating their time and efforts. And I'm thinking this is appalling. Like, we should have at least, 6 umpires that are professionally employed, even if it's a part-time job or 6 months a year, whatever you want to do it. So they are coming to every single training session where they're rotating Super League teams. They're out there, they're doing the friendlies, they're doing whatever. And, like every other professional sport has paid refs. Like, why is not netball doing that? Like, and actually take some responsibility then, going, right, actually you're not good enough. Like, you don't deserve to be paid this year because, this season wasn't very good, and on review it isn't great. Whereas at the moment we don't have that choice, because if we're not paying them, then we don't have anyone else to do the job, or actually they're the best of a bad bunch. Whatever it is, it's not fair. Whereas if you have an incentive that people can go, oh, I can actually go part-time, actually I can do that, or I don't know, it fits in with school, it fits in whatever. It's like you want to empower people, and without umpires we can't play the game. And actually, without the umpires getting better, we can't get better at the game. So it's a big vicious circle, I think, and it's all connected. And yeah, it could be quite detrimental to the sport if we don't grow that element of trust in them or to get VAR.
Yeah, Chloe, you've been good on this, haven't you? Like, we've kind of introduced like lots of different things all at the same time, and almost it feels like maybe the umpires and the speed and the intensity of the game, if we're going to kind of make our athletes professional, maybe addressing how that's affected across the board should have been maybe part of that kind of core first plan. On the subject of injuries, Chloe, standard round update. Where are we at with squads, players back, new players arriving? What's the latest?
Yeah, so Manchester Thunder gave us an update on Lois Pearson and Paige Reed. No explicit timeline was given for Reed, but it was clarified that it was a stress injury. So that sort of typically means that there isn't really an explicit timeline. And then with Lois Pearson, we were told sort of hoping to be back for the end of the season. So that's not a week timeline, but there's a goal in mind. So that's interesting. As that update came just before the Pulse game, but they're working towards that. So it looks like they're going to be part of the bigger picture eventually. We got news that Dragons will be replacing permanently Leah Middleton with a Lightning Next Gen and England Futures player. That was Selena. She appeared on the court actually in the Lightning game, funnily enough, against her Next Gen side. So that's some big news. But then I guess there has, off the back of that, in that Lightning group, there was some other injury news. Niamh McCall had an ankle injury that she sustained, I think, playing for Scotland, and didn't really know the extent of it until she got back. And it looks like she's now out for the season. And I think there was another Lightning Next Gen player that is also out injured, right? Lindsay's nodding along. So I think I'm getting this correct. So that's 3 Next Gen out of Lightning all at once.
We just played them twice. Oh. Give us a hit, give us a help out, guys. But time is everything. Poor girls.
Very quickly on Next Gen, Lindsay, and we've kind of saved this for the back end of the podcast. But how are you finding it so far? Like, it feels like a good part of what we want to introduce to our kind of whole kind of professionalization process. What's it been like in boots on the ground terms?
Yeah, I mean, already 2 players from Next Gen have been selected to go and play in Super League teams. We've obviously got Selena, who's been selected for Dragons. We've got India Massa, who's obviously gone up to Thunder. So, it's definitely, as we always say to our girls, it's NSL shopping ground. Like, there's... oh my God, I should really know this, but I'm pretty sure there's 9 teams, that's 12 athletes on every single one. You're looking at 100 girls that are putting their hand up saying, look, pick me next. Like, I'm ready for it. And, our girls are playing NSL teams every week. Like, we are their opposition. Like, we are the training partners being given them time against. So, they're performing against the best in the country. So I think it's showing. I think a lot of the games are a lot closer. I think actually we're showing how netball is strong across all franchises, and we're really benefiting from the fact that we've got good coaches in, we've got dedicated athletes, and they're all wanting to strive to be picked for NSL. So maybe that's a bonus of only having 10 in a team, that other people are trying harder to be seen and to be picked, and it's just a great opportunity for them to progress to the next level.
Yeah, okay, well, that's really interesting, because I think there's that which teams can play with their Next Gen players, I think is that the same across the franchises, or it's slightly different?
I mean, I think it's different on each ground depending on space to train, and if you are able to have your Next Gen train alongside you. But I know us at Pulse that we often have nights where we will be used, and our girls will have match play against Pulse seniors, and currently they're sitting pretty at the top, so we can't be doing a bad job. We've got some pretty talented women in our team, and they're doing a great job, and I'm hoping, and I think it is the case for most of them, or they have access to some training sessions, so it might be the ones where they offer it during the daytime, that again, some of the selected 10 may or may not be present, or may not be able to commit to certain things. So the fact that they can ask their Next Gen to step up and to come in and help train and be opposition and do things like that is available. So I'm hoping it's across most. Obviously Bath don't have that senior option, but they're still really strong. They've got a great university set up. They've got some really talented athletes, and they've got many that have still stuck around. So they haven't gone back home. They haven't gone back to their local franchises. They've actually stayed in Bath for another year to be able to do their NSL contract via Next Gen, rather than, and they're still getting crowds that, they're still getting like 400 people come and watch, which I know sounds small in comparison to the arenas that we're getting, but it's Next Gen. It's not NSL. Like, the fact that the Bath are such diehard fans that they're willing to come out and watch their next generation and be like, oh, I was the first person to see X, Y, and Z play. I think that's great in itself as well. So, testament to Team Bath doing and, keeping their flag.
Streaming, Chloe, feels like tipping point was reached this weekend, right? It feels like I don't know. I think everyone's moaned and groaned about it often enough. Lindsay, we'll get your thoughts in a second. But when Jiva Menta weighs in and says kind of enough's enough, I think everybody starts to listen. And not that, her opinion should be any more valid than the person who's watching down the road, but it feels like, and we will always come back to this point because Claire Jones said it brilliantly in our first ever episode. It's like, if we're going to hold players to account, then the kind of whole product has to be. And really, I know we keep saying it, but it's not been good enough. And the Rhinos Thunder game, as of right now, and we record this on a Monday night, and I have been playing catch up. It's the one game I can't watch yet because the stream hasn't been replaced, as far as I understand it. First of all, Lindsay, like I guess you're on the same page as everybody else. It's just not good enough, is it?
No, you wouldn't be doing this for women's football. You won't be doing definitely for men's. Like, imagine if for a match of the day, they turn around and be like, "Oh, sorry guys, don't have any footage of, the two local teams that you want to watch." It's just not okay. And the fact that we now have a comparison of what the BBC are doing and now what Sky are doing, I think that's also been really helpful to push the fact that it's not good enough. And if you're going to distribute it to a third party, that's fine, but get a decent one. There's plenty of people out there who are able to stream and get things going, and we've had plenty of like startup companies that have helped at men's or mixed nationals and have done a fabulous job and not had any issues with their delivery or their ability to show netball matches live and to get them uploaded onto performance pathways or platforms and things like that. So I just think, you've been called out, so get yourself back in the game and actually do what you originally did. Like, we have to remember that Sky were the ones that originally picked up netball. Like, I used to have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and watch it on Eurosport on Channel 4, or really, really early on Channel 4 when we'd have a random England match that we were hosting at Wembley. And nowadays I'm just like, this isn't okay. Like, we should be able to go onto YouTube and watch it, or we should be able to go onto any platform and get it available. If I can watch SNN with no problem, why the hell am I not watching something in my own country with no problems? It's just not good enough. I don't know what you think, Chloe, but I just think, you need to step your game up.
I feel like you've taken the words out of my mouth in many ways. Like, we were sitting here saying a couple of weeks ago that we're so busy arguing for just like, a basic stream that works with a scoreboard that works with a time that works, that we don't even get to like push for more, which we actually started to see from the BBC. And we got, for the first time, we got stats after every quarter, which was nice. It feels like, oh my gosh, it's Christmas. But come on, like, that's part of any professional sport product that you see. Like, it's entirely possible. And I think that's really important. And then to your point about comparing it to the BBC, when it went down, there was an apology that came across, and I think that's sort of where the frustration is mostly built with Sky, is that there hasn't been a formal apology. But Paul, we promised people that we would ask, and we've had a statement from Sky, right?
We have had a response. It's taken a couple of weeks. We've spoken to both England Netball and Sky Sports, as we kind of mentioned on last week's podcast. I'm going to read this because it's a statement, so forgive me if I slightly divert my attention. But this is kind of from the team at Sky. We're aware of technical issues during coverage of the Netball Super League at the weekend, which caused picture degradation and sound issues for our customers. We worked to resolve the problem as quickly as possible and apologise for any inconvenience caused to those watching. We are working to prevent further issues happening in the future. So, I mean, to me, fine. Thank you very much, first of all, because, we have asked, and I don't know if Sky have actually apologised or issued a statement to anyone so far. So that to me is the first step. But that's, the weekend wasn't just the first issue, was it? Like, it's been regular. And to your point, Lindsay, and this is a great point, I think, the COVID bubble, I know it was all in one place, but the product was outstanding. And I know it didn't have crowds or anything like that, but everyone playing in an arena that looked the same, on a court that looked the same. That consistency looked fantastic. But yeah, in the first instance, thank you to Sky for replying to us and kind of reaching out. But I think the proof will be in the pudding. We'll now continue to watch going forward. We'll have 3 more games on YouTube this weekend, right? And let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think the fact that you can't catch up on the Thunder game, so our analysis is going to be one man down. Is
blame Rory McIlroy for that.
We'll blame and Rory. God damn it, Rory, being so excellent in that. But I think it's that was just the worst it had ever been. So let's hope that is the worst that it ever was, and that we go forwards from it. But as you said, the proof will be in the pudding, and so we'll see. There's plenty of games still to come. So let's see.
Let's see. And Lindsay as well, you mentioned this, and Chloe said this a couple of weeks ago. Just being able to watch the thing shouldn't be what we're demanding from our product. We should have good quality analysis, whether that's sort of half-time on big screens, whether that's rolling graphic in to see what the 7 is at any given time. Because at one stage, Panthers made 3 changes at the weekend and a couple of positional ones as well. It was hang on a minute, this is taking me a couple of minutes to get my head around what's going on. Whereas it would be really nice if the 7 just rolled across the bottom as it does after half-time in a football match. That's not rocket science.
Well, that's the thing. You see this even lower, not just Premiership football. You see it in lower end football.
Yeah.
They have the capabilities of doing it, and we have enough netball lovers, nerds, whatever you want to call them, that are happy to do that. And we have ladies and gentlemen who are on our benches in every single match doing those statistics live. Those table officials are unsung heroes of the netball game. They are constantly. They can't sit there and enjoy the match. They have got a job to do. They are taking the stats. They're doing the centre passes. They're doing the contacts, the feeds, everything that's going on. They're doing it live at that moment. So I'm just why can't we have a runner? Why can't we have someone that can get up, or the bird's eye camera view? There's got to be an option for them somewhere to be able to get that information if we don't physically have people able to do it at BBC or at Sky. So I just think, again, it's another thing that's scuppering women's sport, that they're not investing. The prediction is by Forbes that this is going to be a billion pound area, which is women's sport, and if we don't invest now, we're going to lose people.
Yeah.
And netball is exciting. We are good at it in England. It's unusual. We have a sport that we're very good at, and we're not Olympic funded. We do this all on all the shoulders of all the wonderful women that have come before us, and men now. We need to capitalize on this. And as you said, the product we gave in COVID was, considering it was COVID and the whole world was shutting down, we did a really good job. And it's just such a shame that momentum has kind of crumbled or just not been reinvested. If we were able to do it then why can't we do it now, and why can't we do it better? Why even just agreeing with basic? We need to have better. Why not?
On that basis, I chucked in the running order, April the 15th. Does it mean anything to either of you two from a netball perspective?
Oh, Com Games.
Gold medal. Well, by the time this goes out, it will be anniversary time. And I suppose it ties in nicely to that point, Lindsay. Have we moved forward significantly enough from that fantastic, groundbreaking moment? It's maybe food for thought.
I think so. And, I can see that from working in Pathways. And personally, I do a lot of netball camps in my holidays. I love getting down and working with, grassroots players, and the standard is insane. One of my year groups at school, I have good kids that are good netballers, and you go to some of these other schools, other places, other clubs, and I'm just wow, these kids are insane. And I look and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I was 15 again, would I have been selected for England? Would I have made it? I don't know. I genuinely don't know if I would have done. My height is one thing, but I meet wonderful teenagers that are my height already, and I'm like, you're how old? They're like, we've got one girl who plays for under 17, Debs, and I'm just I look square in the eye to her, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I didn't get to my height until I was fully grown at 19 years old. I was just, it's mad. But I do think there's still, the wave is still there, and we have to keep it alive. I know the girls that were there and part of it are really good at reliving it and re-putting it onto social media, and I'm like, yeah, it's a gold medal, it's the first one we've ever won. We need to still be celebrating this. It's not like it's a decade ago, or if it's 20 years ago. It's still within two cycles away. That's not that long. I was part of England for 3 cycles, so it's still part of the this journey that we're currently on. And I think we still need to ride that wave, and we are still competing as well. We got silver. at the last competition, world competition, we've got a silver medal. So actually, we're making finals. We're showing that England netball is on the map, and that is down to our league being good, our players having exceptional opportunities abroad as well. Imogen Allison and is doing a fabulous job at Firebirds. They've had a complete shift in turnover in the start of their season. So, a good honour, and that's only good for England netball personally. That's a whole nother podcast of talking about.
When I realised what the date was, I messaged Chloe and I said, actually, probably need a standalone England Remembers Gold Medal podcast.
Oh, 100%. People would tune in for that. I promise you that is definitely what you need to be doing, and just all of the other implications of what that meant as well. And to do it in Australia has only made Australia try to be better as well. It's all been positive. A little bit, but
To your point, Lindsay, like Helen Housby, who was such an integral part of that moment, like she's still pretty much at the top of the game in one of the most exciting sort of the shooting combos we've ever seen in netball, like we could have ever conceived of, and she's the experienced part of it, but she's there bringing up this superstar in Grace Wecke. So yeah, like it really wasn't that long ago, and the legacy is kind of happening and building right in front of us. It's really cool.
It is so cool. I mean, I did have a mild panic attack when I realised she was 30 years old this year. I was like, oh my God. I was like, you're still only 30? I was like, jeez. I was like, wow. And she's smashing it. And, I just think that's credit to all that work that Tracy Nev did with her in the pathway and her time at Thunder. And, opportunity knocks. And if you don't take them, you can't ride the wave. And, she is a dream. She is, everyone wants her jersey. Everyone wants everything for her. And I only wish her the best. That, if that's where your netball career takes you, that's bloody brilliant. And what an amazing thing to be able to say to a young girl or boy, this is, you could be the next Helen Housby. You could be so-and-so. And, I think that's amazing. It's very good netball as well. It's worth getting up at like 5 a.m. to go and watch it, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, it really is. Okay, that's a bit of a roundup of the news. We're going to throw it forward and look back at round 5. And maybe this is the sleep deprivation from the weekend, but I did say that we're going to try and do this in a slightly different way, rather than go through kind of each game, kind of really break it down. We're starting to see certain patterns emerge. So I'm going to go to you for this first, Chloe. But I've said that if we all maybe pick one of the teams who did something or stood out to us, so sort of stocks up is how I've kind of sold this. Sort of, if you kind of pick something out from a game, Chloe, and then maybe we back that kind of game and those two teams around. But one kind of thing that stood out for you from a team this week.
My netball stock pick is going to be the London Mavericks. I was at the game in Nottingham, and I think it's interesting. The overwhelming feeling going into it was that Forest were going to win. I didn't necessarily have that, but I had been in Brighton as well the week before at Mavericks' game against Panthers, and I saw the difficulties and the errors that they were sort of forced into by Panthers. So, there's only 4 or 5 days turnaround actually between that game and this one. But I was so impressed by quite a lot of Mavericks, but really that shooting end, Emily Andrew, week on week, if you look, she's just on the trajectory. It's so sharp, the incline. She looks physically stronger, mentally stronger, how she handles the hits, and we did see quite a juicy one, Paul, didn't we? That was sort of caught the attention of social media with Jada Peckover giving it some off the ball. But it was also the wider piece as well. Like I think I had been critical myself of how that goal attack works for Mavericks, but I really liked the way that sort of Emma Thacker came out, did a job. But then Amelia Hall entered the game, and I think she was a bit of a super sub for Mavericks, who really kind of they started well, but they really cleaned up in the fourth quarter. So they rode the wave of Forest coming back. There was some good defensive effort. I thought Razia Quashie was great, and we'll hear from her. I've got a nice little clip of her for us to get into when we kind of flesh out the game a little bit. But for me, that's a Mavericks team that have done the hard bit. They've been on the right side of two really tough games, and then they came into this one kind of the underdogs, and then they just kind of walked away with it with an 11-goal win. So I was saying, well, how do you like that? And I think we did like it. So I liked it anyway. So I where they sit on the table, I was impressed. I think that game is also a big one for their top 4 ambitions, given that Forest probably like good competition for that. So yeah, that'll be me. That'll be mine.
Lindsay, anything stand out for you from that game?
That game specifically, I do think, and this isn't not me hating on Mavericks, they have been very lucky with their last minutes of the game, and the super shot has saved them numerous times, which kind of leads to my favourite pick of the season so far. Well, actually, yeah, when Van der Berg managed to get, 6 super shots in 90 seconds, I was like, oh my God, that was incredible. But I do think Mavericks are very jammy, and you know what, actually, I'll give them credit. Like previous years, they haven't achieved and they haven't done what they should have done. Whereas this year, I do think they are taking their opportunities and they're being smart with their players. Like Kira, they miss Kira, but actually Amelia Hall stepped up and did a fantastic job. But yeah, they are jammy. They are very jammy in the last.
Not jammy on an injury front, though. I think we probably ought to say, given that they've lost 2 goal defenders.
Oh, definitely. Don't get me wrong. But what I mean is, it's like, again, I think after the Loughborough game, which, don't get me wrong, Loughborough were not their usual superb standard, Nottingham capitalised on that and played incredibly well. They actually stepped up to the calibre of Loughborough and smashed it and showed them exactly how to play netball. It's just a shame they dropped it against Mavericks, and I don't think we saw the best side of Nottingham compared to what was the previous game that they'd been playing. So, yes.
Shall we hear from Chelsea, Paul? Because I spoke to her after the game, and this is actually, to Lindsay's point, this is what she said.
But we're still very much a brand new team. We're gelling week in, week out. Yeah, London Mavericks are a new team in naming rights, but they've been together quite a long time and they've got those connections, and I think that definitely showed. And also the type of wins that they've had leading into this game. They've fallen on the right end of winning 1 point netball, winning 1-1. We need to make sure that we get comfortable going goal for goal, because in that last tactical timeout in that last quarter, we were only down by 6, and then for it to blow out at that little bit is like the disappointing part, because there is that bonus point available, and for us to not secure that is a little bit disappointing. But then also it's all about learnings, and we learnt a lot in that game, and we know that will be very different come next week and as the next time we come up against them.
So can I ask you about the decision to keep Rhea on when she was missing shots and when you had Ray Henshaw on the bench?
Yeah, Rhea didn't miss that many shots. Her stats are actually pretty good. So if you have a look at the craft and the technical way she plays the game outside, she's more than a shooter. And the craft and the style of play, she is the most crafty goal attack in the league. So she's more than the shot, and she definitely, if you look at her stats, are actually really good.
And a word on the Mavericks defence, because they really tonight sandwiched Rowley, particularly in that last super shot period. You only got 2 goals in that final quarter. What are you going to take away from that going in the game against Panthers next week?
I think they defended Rolling quite well in that space, but I also think they got away with a little bit more as well. So I think it was won by 2 different ends very differently. If you have a look, there was one scoring end and there was one that you didn't get much away with. So it's just the way the cookie crumbles, I guess, in that space. But we will have a look at that, because teams are going to double and roll in. I know if I was defending our team, I would 100% do that. And it's just the way it is in rolling. She's still, like, credit to her, she still kept putting the super shots off. And she's allowed to have an off day. And it wasn't even a bad off day for her. But for her, she'll be disappointed in that. But I guess I'm still proud of what they did. It was a tough day in the office, and we just go again on Monday.
Yeah, good. I tried to get Chelsea on the opening weekend of the season, and I was interested to see how they're going to evolve. You know me, I somehow, I don't know why really, maybe because I've got a small affinity to their football team for some reason, but I kind of like Forest. I thought they were a little bit disappointing at the weekend, but actually I thought Mavs deserved, considering their defensive end has changed so much. I think Quashie, Jenna Donoghue and Izzy Phillips now looks like a trio. If it gets some time together, looks like it could really grow and give them sort of a defensive base, because they've obviously had an awful lot of changes. And Chloe, you spoke to Raz as well.
I did, yeah. I spoke to Raz about her new partnership with Gemma, which is about a week old, but she's absolutely delighted with her.
Raz, a massive win after a 1-point win the week before. How does it feel to get that over on Nottingham?
Honestly, it feels amazing. I think the team were wanting to push on this week, and I think we did that. So I'm really proud of everyone on court, and to do it in this fashion, winning by 11 is just amazing.
The super shot defence that you guys were putting out, the next sort of level that you went up to is with Gemma on board. Like, tell me a little bit about the tactics behind that.
I think for us, we wanted to stop Ronin from shooting those two-point shots. I think that's part of her game, and I think we targeted that this week. So I'm really happy with the performance and seeing that she didn't take as many as she did the previous week, so really happy with that performance.
What's it like having Gemma on board? I hope she's got over a jet lag. When I was speaking to Camilla last week, she was like, I'm not sure that the jet lag's got over yet.
She is all the way over yet, but I think for her to come out and perform in the fashion she is just amazing.
And do you find, has she been helpful with the...
100%. I think I like a defender who knows what they're doing and is just sure what they're doing, so I can do my work behind. I think we're building each week, and shouldn't have been here a week, so to put out that performance has been amazing.
And for you had a productive game. I'd love to be able to talk about your stats, but I haven't got them on the website. But it felt like a big one for you.
Yeah, 100% pleased with it. Last week I got player of the match for doing nothing, so I was like, this week I'm going to do something to deserve, having that performance backed up.
So Raz there with a good sense of humour about her pom that we all thought was slightly questionable, but no doubt about that performance that she put out against Forest. But Lindsay, tell us a little more about what you thought about Thunder, because you pointed to Elmeré's super shooting there. I think we were all a bit blown away by that one, of the bit that we could see, right, with the stream.
Yeah, of course. Well, that was it. I am fortunate that we have access to Huddle where we can watch other matches, so we're quite lucky on the inside. But I would say, as we were talking earlier, keepers have got to be smarter. And I think, Jiva and Hayes were really struggling with the fact and their centre passes were so soppy. It was so frustrating. I was watching being like, guys, it's a close match. You could get a win out of this. What? Get that centre pass to goal. And I think, Thunder, considering, what did they start with? Maybe 6 of their original 10 players in their very first game. I think they're on the back of a good winning streak, and actually that's due to the fact that they've bled players for the first time for a long time. Actually, their combinations are quite fresh. They are putting different combinations out there and trying really hard with, trying to get people exposure as well as making sure we're winning quarters. And good on them. And Vanderberg was just outstanding. Like, she cool as a cucumber. She knew her job. She knew what she was doing. She was well aware of that time, and she just had confidence every time, absolutely sinking it every single time. I am secretly jealous. I'd love to go mark a shot to see if I could interrupt it, because it was unbelievably slick, and credit to her, because I don't think many people can be that calm and collective with 90 seconds to go, knowing that you need to secure at least three super shots to secure your win without the opposition being able to get back at you. So yeah. I still think she was robbed of pom, talking about random poms. I was like, what else do you have to do, girl? What else do you have to do?
It wasn't the only questionable pom, I think, that weekend either. But to chime in with you there, to me, Paul, it was like a basketball player, when Michael Jordan, probably before that winning time with the Bulls, would just take over. She was just demanding that ball, and she was just, there was something on her face that said, we're not losing this, I'm not having this. And that kind of elite level. And Lindsay, I don't know if you've caught up with our Unlocked podcast with her, plug, but she actually was saying she was scared. She was scared of the super shot. She was scared of shooting from range before the season started. And it wasn't until the Super Cup she put the first one in, and she was like, yeah, okay, I can do this. It's just remarkable, isn't it?
It's so mad, because I feel like this is like a South African superpower. There are so many of them, not only in just our league, but just everywhere, that can do a 2-pointer and do it so well. I remember playing in a Fast Five, donkey's years ago, 2012 or 2013, and they had these amazing shooters doing, the 6 points outside the circle, and I was just like, where have you come from? I've never played you in an international circuit before, but they just bust them out for Fast Five. And I just think, the confidence, and like you say, you get one in and you grow from confidence. But I just think, is that what we want from the game? because actually, are we now going to be a point where if all our national leagues are doing 2 points, does international become 2 points? Where do we draw the line? Or is it just two separate things? Like international netball is one thing, national league netball is another, but I don't really know any other sports that have such different ideas. But yeah, I am still not, even though she was incredible, I still don't know if I still love the super shot or not. But she was making me turn from my very grandma viewpoints about it to maybe I need to enjoy this and embrace it.
Yeah, I think that's part of the beauty of it. I've kind of tried to stay open-minded of it because I think I like the jeopardy that it potentially brings, because I do think, as I mentioned, one of the first things I learned when I started covering the sport, which was probably about 10 years ago now, was about defensive play and turnovers. And then you sort of start to put more emphasis on different areas. And I do think to a degree, we now want to see more from our shooters. Now, that obviously affects the whole game in a completely different way. I haven't seen the game yet, so I can't comment, but I do know what Elmeré's interview was like, tick. And I also know that she's been outstanding so far. And I love athletes in any sport. And I mentioned Rory McIlroy, you mentioned sort of Michael Jordan. I love it when an athlete can kind of use their force of personality to take over a game. I think that is such a unbelievable thing to watch in any given sport. And we alluded to it a little bit with Helen Housby as well. Sometimes you can see sort of bend the game to her will, is how I've often described stuff in match reports. And I think that's something super exciting to sort of maybe see some of the bigger personalities in netball kind of move forward with. I'm going to pick Dragons Lightning as my game, and something we touched on last week. This game was way closer than I thought it was going to be, and I do think, and another little plug here, our Unlocked is with Vic Burgess, and we kind of get into this a little bit with her. What do Lightning do at the moment? Like, back-to-back championships is brilliant. It's obviously not something that has happened in the Super League before. Winning 3 in a row is going to be sort of a big... winning 3 in a row is not something that's kind of happened before. They made changes in the off-season, but maybe not the changes where they needed to make them. Is this... I mean, and looking at the league table, a gap has already started to emerge, but can Lightning make themselves serious contenders this year? I'm going to go to you first, Lindsay, because I think they're Lightning, so yes, they'll be there, but do we think they've got what it takes to go 3 in a row?
I mean, there's been a few seasons where teams have got the better of Loughborough in the league, and then they pull it out of the bag when it comes to playoffs. Like, they are well rehearsed, well organised. Vic has a tight ship, and those girls are formidable athletes. I would agree with you. I don't think they needed to have changed as many players as they did, or I perhaps wouldn't have changed the positions necessarily. I remember playing with Sammy Wallace at Mavericks. She is a very different kettle of fish now. She's gone away. She's done her time at Swifts and at SNN, and she's come back. And we've substituted for Mary, but can you substitute Mary? That is the question. Can you actually do that? I think it's kind of showing now to Loughborough that they can't just rely on one-dimensional play. They have to make sure there's variety and keeping it live. And I'm a big Ella Clark fan. The fact that she's come back from when she did her ACL in that final, it was mad. And I just literally only feels like yesterday when that happened. And the fact that she's come back really strong, and Berry's there now. I'm a big Berry fan, but I do wonder if there's a bit too much at stake between those 3 shooters. Like, who do you pick? Who do you put on? Who is the best combo? There isn't a clear-cut combo that is excelling amongst them. And I do think Loughborough are not necessarily developing across all the games as well as the other teams are. So it would be interesting to see where they go from this. They scored 70 goals still. There was
exactly,
control, and Dragons, bless them. To lose Lear is just huge for them, absolutely massive. So are Loughborough being pushed? Are they not? To lose against Nottingham wasn't probably what they expected. But if you lose your momentum of your game and you have all those mistakes creep in, you can't blame the opposition. You can only look at yourselves. So, yeah, I'm with you, Loughborough.
I also think we judge champions on a really higher level, don't we? I think when you are the champions, you get judged at a higher level.
But I think we have to remind ourselves who we're talking about. We're talking about Samantha Wallace-Joseph. We're talking about Ella Clark, England Rose, Berry Neal, England Rose, Hannah Joseph, England Rose, Nat Panagari, Nat 2019 World Cup, Beth Cobden, Commonwealth Games winner, World Cup winner, silver medal. Like, this is not a inexperienced side. This is actually super experienced, and they're still struggling. Or, I mean, a question we have to ask ourselves is, good game by Lightning or a really good game by Dragons, because they actually had the chance to nick a bonus point off Lightning. Like, Philippa Yarrington gets that 2 points in, and it's a bonus point time, and it's bottom of the league getting bonus point against Loughborough Lightning. So I think there's something afoot there that I think the recruitment is just, as Lindsay said, it's just not been on it, or there's not been enough work done with it to make it sing. And I appreciate that Ella Clark Berry Neal wasn't necessarily going to be the plan, like perhaps straight away, but I still think the caliber of that player should be working better than it has been. And then also I think the other thing is the defense, like Jodie Gibson cleaned up, and she got player of the match, and there were some poor feeds by Dragons. I think they were gifted some ball coming in, and there was Georgia Rowe got sent off with a split lip, somehow didn't get the contact goal. Amazing.
But with some of those calls this season, oh my goodness,
interesting. Hey, but I think the I just think that they're quite similar, Jodie Gibson and Shadeen van der Merwe, as defenders. So you've kind of got two defenders that do the same. But it was interesting because Vic still rotated her circles, both ends. She tried some players out, but nothing shifted the dial because the score was still pretty much all within about, an 11 goal. I can't quite remember the biggest margin, but it didn't ever kick on, did it? So it's an interesting one. I think there is a question being asked of Loughborough Lightning here.
Well, another plug. Loads of questions coming up for Vic Burgess, and we'll get into that very shortly. But the last game of the round are the leaders, Pulse. They stay perfect. I think probably from their own admission, the last couple of weeks was maybe, and I spoke to Sam Bird about this for the website and for the preview, they were hoping to learn a lot about travel and preparation and how kind of all that was going to work. But they were tested against Panthers again, and that's the second week in a row that they were tested. Kept to their lowest goal tally of the season as well. I don't know any word from inside the camp, Lindsay, but kind of how are Pulse taking that, because it was a hard fought win, definitely.
Yeah, I think there were moments where they were exposed in the fact that Panthers had done their homework. They had clearly watched previous matches and had a game plan for Liss's speedy and change direction. And in the circle, they were roughing Olivia up a lot, trying to get her riled. And I do think, we've already touched on Gabson being injured, but, to have 10 minutes out of her being treated, then 10 minutes of umming and ahhing if we were going to continue play and then warm up. So even though they dipped, I think they lost a run of six goals at that point, which meant Panthers were within 2 points of taking over. I do think that Sam would have seen this as a massive opportunity for the girls to have experienced, although horrendous, something different to prepare them for future games, to prepare them perhaps for a final that's going to be like that, or a semi-final. And I think Pulse, unfortunately, for the past few seasons, even when I was there, we always seem to be the bridesmaid. We're never quite the bride yet. And I think they corrected that at the pre-season game, at the tournament. And I think it was nice for them to actually finally get the win that they've been deserving, that Sam Bird's been building this team towards. And I do think that Panthers, it can be might be someone's boo-boo team. And everyone always has a boo-boo team that you can't quite push yourself to be better than. And for some reason, you don't excel with your performance level and it goes down. But Pulse, every game so far have pushed that in the last 5 minutes. Super Shot has been their absolute, superpower, and every game they've blown it out in the last 6 to 7 minutes of every game. So, they did the same. They got within touching distance Panthers, and then Pulse were cool, calm, changed their stats, changed their viewpoint, and then just absolutely propelled into the that. And again, yes, they didn't score as much, but I think with the big sort of change up and pause and play didn't help that. And I think if they would have kept the momentum, it would have been a very different story.
Chloe, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I think well, Sam sort of addressed this in the post-match, but the whistle, the attention that Pulse copped from the umpire across the court as well. It wasn't just the defenders, but Zara Everett came off. Hallie came off. Liv, I think, did actually also have a warning as well. So that, and so it was both umpires handing them out. But and then obviously the suspension we talked about with Darcy at the top. Yeah, I think the chinks in the armour have been shown between Leeds and Panthers now in Pulse. So I think it'd be really, really interesting. I don't want to kind of get in front of our preview, but with what Thunder will do with that information that they've now got it. I think Jazz Brown, as Lindsay said, like between Jazz Brown and Gabby Coffey, certainly pushed Liv, maybe to the point we haven't seen yet. Like, we're rolling around, getting in front. Nicole Briett had quiet patches in that game as well. So I think there's something to be looked at there for Pulse in terms of what happens next. What's plan B when plan A doesn't quite work out? I think that'll be really interesting to sort of see. We saw a lot from Gracie Smith actually as well in that game. What did you make about the Pulse change to bring her on when Sam put Gracie on? Because there were two changes. Sophie Kelly came on at the same time. What do you make of that?
I think it's amazing that Sam has that confidence to put it in such a young player. Like, if I was 16 again and someone was willing to put that kind of punt and confidence in me, you're going to thrive in that. And I do think she brings something completely different to the game at centre. She is such a unit. Like, her wingspan is incredible. Like, she just reminds me of sort of a pumped up, super up version of Zara Bayman Francis, where she just had such range. She was like a really unique tall centre, and that's what Gracie is. She's so tall, she's so dominant in that. For a 16-year-old, she's holding her own. Like, she's doing a really good job. I perhaps would not have put both her and Sophie Kelly on at the same time. I think that was very confident, and that's not to say that the two of them did deserve that. I just think it wasn't the right time to do both of those changes. I would have started with one, and then maybe a few minutes later, depending on how it went, introduce the other or swap or do whatever. But again, it's great that Sam is confident in her 10 players. She has got 10 players that she's very happy to throw on at any point and do a job or come on. And although Darcy, like we said, had the misfortune of being sent off, she was doing a really good job. She was turning ball over. She is coming completely different to Hallie. So I do agree there is some chinks in the armour, and I think, we're in early days yet, we're only in the first third of the season. But I do think at the same time, they are players who are willing to learn, willing to change, willing to up their game. And I think this is where Pulse will step forward compared to other seasons where we've seen them decline when it gets hard. I think the opposite will happen this year. I think as it gets harder and they'll play Thunder on Friday, I think it'll be a much tighter game. I think they'll have everything sewn up by Friday, and I think they'll finally have a game where they can get their teeth into and really show what they're made of.
I do think the change-up is really interesting. I've got an Excel sheet of all the starting sevens, and I think when you look across the full 10, and Pulse have been fortunate enough to not have any injuries yet, they've kind of admitted that themselves, but they do feel like the team who can make changes, and not just like-for-like changes. Chloe, you said this about, I can't remember who you were talking about earlier in this. It was Lightning, sorry. Sometimes it was just like-for-like, or not quite sure what the right combination is. I do think with that bench for Pulse, they know what each person is going to bring, and if they need to change it, how it can effectively change the game, if they need to. And that might not always work, but it will. Sometimes you just need to make a change that does something different, and I feel like we're going to see a little bit more of that. I do think Thunder are similar, actually, especially when they get everybody fit, which is why it's maybe a little bit disappointing that they won't have everyone fit this weekend. But we'll get into the preview in a second.
So if that was Pulse and Pulse got the win, where do we feel that Panthers maybe came up short in that game? Because I think, as Lindsay pointed out, actually, like, they got to level with Pulse, and which we haven't really seen yet, when we talked a little bit about the defence end. But where else do you think, Lindsay, you think Panthers were good and maybe could grow?
I think they are unfortunate that they haven't quite established what to do consistently. So they have moments where they get ball clean, or however they choose to get it, they get ball, and their transition from a defence to attack is seamless, and they get it down to goal. And it was great to see Gabby back in the game at goal attack. That was really interesting, actually. They will keep flitting them
Yeah.
on and off and moving around. And one point Betsy was a goal shooter, and Joe Tripp being back clearly showed that she was happy to manipulate her team in lots of different ways. But I would say then how can I put it, like, you're watching the game but you knew there was going to be a point where they just couldn't consistently do that over time, and I think that's when teams underestimate them, because that's when they do get turnover, and the defense is doing a fantastic job. Coffee was a demon back at goalkeeper, like really making life tough for Liv, and they were capitalising on the turnover. But I wouldn't necessarily say that their centre pass was as accurate as it could have been, or as easy as it could have been as well. Like, a lot of ball was going off the back line. Like, Ziggy's a strong holding shooter. How the hell can you not feed her? Like, I'm quite concerned with that personally. After playing with Ziggy myself, I'm like, come on, like, she is a target, and if you can't get the ball to her, what are you doing? And I know there's a relationship between shooters and wing attacks and centres at the same time, but I would be questioning, why is that not so easy, or why is that not as easy as it should be? So
I think I agree. I think that when Ruth Hughes was sort of maybe forced on because she was off of Gabby, there were just some feeds that were just sort of like, where was that going? Like, where was it going? And there were generally across the park some basic errors. I feel like, one thing London Pulse is going to do to you is they're going to run you through the ball, right? They're going to run with you all the way up to when you catch the ball, and if you're not moving when you catch the ball, they're going to come and take the ball off you. And that happened to Betsy Creek quite a few times. I think Jess Shaw was found a bit guilty of not necessarily meeting the ball as well, and that just sort of felt like either you're not paying enough respect to your opposition who do this for fun, or you're sort of missing quite a basic part of your netball. And I think we've seen a little bit of that of certain characters in earlier games as well. So it sort of feels like, right, when are we going to kick on past this sort of thing? And the changes as well was really interesting, because as you said, like, Gabby sort of came on and off. I imagine because of the break in play and Gabby Sinclair, the first game back, that we didn't see her back on must be a managed minutes sort of situation. And probably if you have that kind of break warming back up, because it didn't really look like a proper warm up, was maybe part of that decision making process. We're not sure, we weren't there, but I think Leah Zaranika for me was the bright spot. Like, I think she came on and did quite a good job on Liz Skulls, but I think there are some little basics in there that maybe ought to get sort of switched on.
I mean, I think it could be their first win, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think they're quite well.
They are continuing to knock at the door. I think we have to say that about Panthers. They have been in pretty much every game they have played, and that, I think, speaks to your point, Lindsay. It's just like, can they put it all together and kind of get, what I think many would say is probably a deserved first victory, because they've been in games, every game as well, I think. We're getting to the preview now in a second, but next up it's our extended interview series, and hot on the heels of sort of coaches and players up and down the league, we have Vic Burgess, the head coach, as we've mentioned, of the two-time defending champions, and obviously we've kind of questioned a few things this season. That was amongst our questions. Here's a little taster of what's to come from Vic. Are there one or two key ingredients to being champions that you think? Is there a couple of little? I'm sure you're not going to share the secrets, but are there a couple of things that you kind of feel are sort of non-tangible and non-negotiables, or the real tangible stuff?
I think it's personnel change, like, year after year, and I think it's the setting the expectations is really clear. The players, the staff, all being a part of those, and then everybody buying in. So, like, that all-in culture, everybody buying into that one goal of being a champion, and actually understanding what it's going to take to get there, because it's not an easy ride, and you sometimes have to make decisions that you don't want to make, in that you've got I don't know, family that you need to see, but ultimately you need to go do a recovery session, or you've got to put yourself in the best position possible to be as ready for the next training session, to be ready for the next game. So I think it very much is like an all-in culture of, like, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to work really hard to get there, and everybody's got to have to be a part of that collectively. So I think that's definitely one thing that is just hugely important, that all-in culture.
Getting towards the end of this, but what about your own ambitions, Vic? Like, do you have any kind of further ambitions? What else do you want to do with your kind of coaching career or your netball career as it stands? Where do you stand on that?
I'm not sure. I think I love where I'm at. I really do enjoy the kind of domestic side, domestic competition. I love the competition, like the way that's like the build up to that across pre-season, and then you're in it for a period of time, and it's week after week, and you kind of get into a routine of like evaluate and problem solve and go. Like I really like that. And probably from where I'm at in my career, like I'm happy with where I'm at right now. And I'm not too sure about the future. I think I tried to be fair, I just want to get through the end of this week. I don't think too much about the future, but I do like learning, I do like developing, and always open to it. So that's probably just something that's on my radar. Like, I like working in different spaces and looking at other sports, how other sports do things, and I'm not sure where that fits with where I want to be in the future, but they're the things I do enjoy. So I'm not going to give you an answer.
That's all right.
I'm not going to give you an answer because ultimately I'm not sure where I want to be in the future, but I really do enjoy where I'm at now.
I'm a journalist, and people are used to not giving me the actual answer. So on that point then, how great to be in the environment that you're in. We spoke about how Loughborough has kind of supported the Lightning franchise, but actually I've been there quite a few times, like the cricket setup, the NFL setup. Sometimes there could be anything going on. Do you kind of physically go out to kind of maybe soak up some stuff from those guys at different times?
Yeah, and it's actively encouraged at the university. Yeah. So people, coaches, directors, athletes like to get into each other's spaces. We, really fortunate, like we have a really good like coach development, coach collaborations it's called, which for me is a really good space to kind of get into. For I think it's every 2 weeks, so it might be like there's more at certain times of the year, but ultimately you get in a room with like different coaches, directors, and like half the time there'll be like problem solve questions, or there might be questions around like individual athlete plans and how people approach things in different ways. Or it might be that you have something to problem solve, so you can take that into that room and go, this is what I'm thinking, what are your ideas, what do you think, how do you do things? And for me, that is a great space to get into, because ultimately they're from different sports, some individual sports, some team sports, and to actually hear, sometimes it's like, oh, actually they're having the same issues as me or the same problems as me. And then sometimes it's like, oh, like, they're problem solved in a really good way there. So it's good space to kind of get in and learn, but also get in and share as well, like what you're going through. But yeah, I think the support and the opportunity in that space at the university is amazing. And just getting into other sports, like watching the rugby and watching the wheelchair basketball, like there's just loads on. And as you said it, like you kind of walk into or drive or walk into campus and it always seems busy. And I do like that. There's always lots going on and lots to get involved in.
Okay, you can catch the full episode in the usual feeds, and as ever, it's a cracking listen. A big weekend of netball, a big Easter weekend of netball, and as Chloe hinted at, there's some bangers. Can we call them bangers? I think we can. They're tremendous games up and down the league, and it starts on Friday night in round 6 with first against second. I'm going to come to you first, Lindsay. Home bias, obviously here, but London Pulse versus Manchester Thunder, I think over the last couple of years, is really a game everyone looks forward to. It will be a real feast of netball.
Oh, definitely. I I think it will be probably the telling game of how we would predict the final to look. And I have a sneaky suspicion that Thunder will come out looking pretty good, but will perhaps maybe not be able to do the full 60 minutes. And I think that might be due to the fact they obviously haven't got some of their key players. I know Paige Reed might be playing our next gen rather than actual Super League on Friday to get her minutes back up. It is a potential, not well, we'll find out if she appears on Friday or not. But we have been sort of briefed in next gen that she might make an appearance against us rather than in the actual Super League team. And I just think, you know, player to player, it's going to be a great game to watch. I mean, both ends of the circle is just going to be the place you want to be watching. If you're going to be at an end at the copper box, you're going to have an absolute treat. You're going to get every penny for your pound watching that Class A netball. It's going to be really, really good.
Which would be your one matchup that you would pick, Lindsay? If you had to pick one to kind of watch.
It's got to be Elmeré Vanderberg against Halimap, so Adier. So I just think that will be class, good fun, and it would just be really intriguing to see how her and Fumi really try and shut down her 2-pointers, because obviously, as we can see, she pushed it out to get that win for them this week. So Pulse have got to be on their A game for manipulating that 5 minutes of super shot. So I think it's going to be a really, really good game, and I do think it's going to be a telltale sign for the final. That would be my call. I think it will be a Thunder Pulse final, but I'm a bit biased.
I was just thinking, as you called it, an Easter feast. Are we not calling it like a feaster or something? I don't know. Weird. Anyway, look, interesting that you point to that matchup, Lindsay, because obviously those guys are familiar internationally as well with South Africa and England. So very interesting. I think obviously the goal attack position is probably Thunder's point of weakness in terms of, I think a little bit their babies, if Anya and Shannon Malik got a little bit exposed against Rhinos. So it'd be interesting to see if Lucy Herdman comes in instead. We'll see what Karen Gregg cooks up. I think Karen Gregg will be cooking because she does like her tactics. So I will point everybody to Liscall's Taylor McKevitt for something lively. I think that will be a good one. And I think a real test for Emma Rayner with Zara Everett, actually, if she starts at wing attack. That will be an interesting one because she's, for me, been growing really week on week, really learning to let ball go. And I think if Thunder can find that quick release in Elmeré, then they'll stay in this game. But yeah, I think it's just a brilliant one, isn't it? What do you reckon, Paul?
Yeah, so I think we've covered off everything there. Where I was going to pick out actually was the two centres. I think probably the two best centres in the league this year. I think Amy Carter, for me, is always outstanding. I'm unashamedly Amy Carter fan. I think Tyler Orr has settled in really well into the Super League. And I think there have been times where we've obviously seen Gracie, which kind of gives the middle of the court a real change-up. But I'd be interested to see how that goes, because I think Tyler and Zara, as we chatted about a couple of weeks ago, Chloe, they do a really good job backing up the sort of defensive side. But they've also been able to kind of add some attacking verve to Pulse. So I'll be really keen to see how they go head to head, because actually they're two who you would kind of trust to go for the full kind of sort of the full 4 quarters as well. So I think between us, we've covered off all 7 kind of matchups on the court. But for me, I think we don't always talk about centre matchups. And for me, those, spoiler alert here, because Chloe and I are talking about doing a team of the season so far episode in a couple of weeks, and when I was weighing up centres, Amy Carter and Tyler Orr stood out to me, so I'll be keeping an eye on that.
You're making your pick before this game?
No, I didn't say I'm making it. I was giving everybody a spoiler as to what was to come.
Hey, this is round 6, so you've only got one more until you're halfway through the season.
I mean, yes, this is true. Yeah, this is why we were teasing it. So yeah.
Okay, well, that I just think will be a good one, but not the only good game. I think this whole round is really going to be delivering. We're really hyping this up, aren't we, crikey? Saturday, Mavericks versus Lightning, Hearts Sports Village, 5 p.m. on Sky Sports. So interesting. Both teams obviously picked up a win in the last round, but both teams have also known a loss. Lightning won more than Mavs, which is very interesting. I think we didn't really probably expect that at this point coming into the season. Lindsay, let me chuck it to you. What do you reckon?
Well, if Mavericks pull out their jamminess for another game, then you'd say they're going to win again. So I'm just saying, and Do you know what? After we talked about Loughborough literally in this round, I think it will be, if Loughborough haven't learnt their mistakes from their previous 2 games, then Mavericks will eat them alive and will dominate. Their cool, calm consistency will pay off. I think it is Lightning's to lose rather than Mavericks to gain, personally. I think Mavericks can win. I'm statistically looking at this, you would expect them to win, but this is probably Mavericks' hardest game that they've played so far, personally. I think this will be the most challenging. Pardon?
No, yeah, cool. Like that'll be, yeah. I think this will. Interesting take. I'm enjoying it. Paul, what do you reckon?
Yeah, so Mavericks against Lightning. For me, I'm really keen to see if Loughborough have got a little bit more about them. I think Mavericks have maybe been more than the sum of their parts this year. I think 3 wins is an incredible effort from them so far this season. 4 wins I think is an incredible effort, and they've kind of got the better of some last second goals, as Lindsay has alluded to. But I do think they've shown a kind of quality that maybe we haven't always associated with them, and that's the ability to kind of come through some of those tougher games. I feel like with that defensive end growing for them, and a little bit of uncertainty in the Lightning attack end, if sort of Mavericks can establish a platform, I feel like that's maybe where this game might be won and lost. This is not anti-Loughborough, by the way. I think they're great. I just think, can they evolve their game now? And as Lindsay says, teams have got the better of them in the past during the season, whether that's in a one-off or nicked a spot over them in the ladder. But actually, if it came to a semi-final and a final, you'd still back them to pull something out. But I actually think this season, we just need to see a bit more from them so far, and I don't think we've seen it yet. So this might be a chance to do that, because Mavs have been a kind of maybe a side that we didn't expect to be third in the table. And Loughborough will hope, obviously, to kind of overhaul them with a win in this game, because that sort of second, third and fourth is really tight, and we've already seen a gap down to Forest, and with third and fourth playing each other, it perhaps opens the door underneath, and we want a really competitive top 4 challenge this year as well. So I think maybe beyond the game that takes place at Hearts, it'll be interesting to see what happens kind of with a knock-on effect to the other games in the league.
Interesting. Well, I'm gonna say that I think Mavericks will win this one. I'm gonna counter Lindsay. I actually why not for the what was it, the content?
Hashtag content.
But for me, the key is going to be, if you're Lightning and you want to come at Mavs, it's got to be Susie Liversiege that you come for, because Susie Liversiege handles a lot of ball for Mavericks. I think she is the connection between her and Emily Andrew is very key. So it will be what Beth Cobden and Nat Panagari do to really hold that ball up, really slow that feed down, because I think Emily Andrew loves the ball in the back space. So they are super shooters, both of them in Mavericks. They are in Lightning as well. We saw that from Sammy Wallace-Joseph. I think she put something like 5 in against Dragons, so she's comfortable shooting. I think it's an interesting test of the Quashie-Donahue partnership as well, to have Wallace-Joseph in there, an England keeper against an SSN player with a SSN goal defender in front of you. I'm interested to see how that goes, and particularly how Berry maybe responds to the challenge of Gemma Donahue. I think by her own admission, she's quite an Australian defender, and with all the subtext you can imagine with what I've just said there. So I think if sort of Mavericks if they progress on from what they put out against Forest, I think they're in good shape. Lightning will need to, obviously, as we've just said, this is not an anti-Lightning podcast, but they will need to find another gear, definitely, because I think Mavs are going to have their tails up and to be tactically ready for... I think both sides actually are very good tactically, so that would be really interesting, for sure.
Panthers Forest. Forest obviously just outside the top 4 at the minute, and probably a little bit disappointed after losing at the weekend. Birmingham, we think, are getting close to a victory. So again, this one feels like it might be a sneaky, under the radar, very good game with 2 fairly evenly matched teams. Lindsay, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of seen it from Nottingham, where they go from a loss and then they normally end up coming out with a win next game. And I adore Chelsea. I'm a big Chelsea fan. I loved playing with her. I think she's a great coach. She's so professional. She brings such a level of authority to that game. And I think she will not allow her ladies to be unprepared for this matchup. And yes, Panthers, I think, will push, but I think they will also miss having Gabs with them on the court again. But I do think Nottingham will come away with the win, or they should at least come away with the win. I think it will be close, and Panthers hopefully will get some points from being within, their bonus point kind of area. But I do think it's Nottingham's game.
I think a chance of back-to-back wins for Forest, because as you said, Lindsay, it's lost one, and now they play Birmingham and they play Rhinos. I think this kind of might define which way their season goes, these two games. So I think how they deal with that pressure for me is going to be particularly interesting. Chloe, anything stand out to you?
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to be devil's advocate again, don't I? Crikey, you two. It's like you're aligned. No, listen.
Put you in this Pulse and Mavericks basket. That's what it feels like.
I think the Rolene question, that sort of what Chelsea said to us earlier about, if I were our opposition, I would 100% double up on Rolene. So we know that Chelsea knows that this is coming. And I think Dixon has been getting better. Yeah. But if Panthers do, under Joe Tripp, who we know is, defence is her sort of area of expertise, if they really do look at that and really shut that rolling striker option down, it's like, what happens next for Forest? And I'm still not convinced that they've answered that question, even though it has been asked of them a couple of times now. So that's obviously going to be really essential to how this match goes, because Rolene is so much at the front of what Nottingham do well. I think that, a lot of people will like the idea of a Leighton Shaw matchup, because Leighton was very active actually in the first quarter and last quarter of the Forest game against Mavericks. So Shaw is an England rose now, so Leighton will probably relish that opportunity to sort of stifle that ball into Berger. I'm not sure how the Pekova Berger matchup is going to go. One thing that I thought was interesting from Forest in their game against Mavericks is that we saw them really with an 8 rather than playing with a 10. Joe Tripp was really playing with a 10, and so were Mavericks. So are we going to see Henshaw, Kadondi on for Forest? Is something Chelsea might look to in this game, given, as you pointed out, Paul, how consequential it could be for Forest's sort of top 4 chances. So I think it will be a really, really good game. And Gabby Sinclair, we saw glimpses of her. I think she was a bit rusty in some parts, maybe not in the shooting part, but with ball in hand, I don't think she'd played a game since last July or something ridiculous. So that will be a really important test. And I think if Panthers are going to get one over on Forest, it will be with her sort of partnering with Creek and Berger in a positive way.
Yeah, that evolution of the circle is something we've said on a few teams. Dragons were one of them as well. I very much think Panthers are there, and you saw kind of the confidence come into just the way they played. I think they slightly used Siggy more effectively when Gabby was on in that second quarter. Like it felt like okay, this is what we were planning. And again, like I will love looking at numbers and league tables, as I continually do. I used to do it for a living. But if you consider the Mavericks Lightning game being kind of pivotal at the top 4, and if Lightning drop points and Forest get a win, and then Birmingham get a win, if Birmingham win, they kind of draw right up into that battle, and then that throws it to the last game of the round, which is Leeds against Cardiff. And if Leeds can get a win, all of a sudden we're looking at kind of those on the outside looking in who perhaps can concertina the league up. And I suppose in terms of big picture, as we've mentioned, we really want to see like a competitive race. We kind of don't want the top 4 done. So I think maybe the inner part of me is thinking, can we get a Panthers win here against a Forest team who've been kind of super inconsistent? So
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Go on, Clive, sorry.
No, you were being really serious and making really valid points, and I dabbed because Siggy Berger dabbed when she finally got that super shot in that everyone's been crying out for. Apparently,
I did forget about the dab.
Yeah, we have to mention the dab. Apparently part of a bet with Aliyah Zaranika, the dab.
Okay,
So she said I wouldn't do it, and Siggy did do it. So there we go. Anyway, to the final game, as you said, quite consequential actually for how this table might end up looking. Dragons versus Rhinos, House of Sport, 7 p.m. So it's a looks like buckle in Saturday night kind of situation. Is that on Saturday, that one?
Yes,
Yeah.
3 games back to back on Saturday. Yeah.
Blimey. Okay, get ready. Don't make any plans, anybody. Lindsay, what do you reckon of this one?
Well, I think this is crucial for Leeds because I felt that they started, their first opener was fantastic and they've kind of lost a little bit of form. And I'm kind of like, you have Joyce and Vula in your team. How? Like, actually, how are you not winning games? But again, you know, I know one player doesn't make a team, but I think this weekend will be crucial because Dragons really took it to Loughborough and they've got the new lineup, they've got their new defender in. So, yeah, I think Leeds will have to be consistent for the whole 60 minutes. They will need to make sure that Mvula turns up and is ready to deliver her on the edge 2 points, like split second goals to go, and capitalise on just being consistent from centre pass and for 60 minutes. I think Dragons could sniff for a win. It'd be lovely if they did, considering everything they've gone through, but I do think Leeds would be my firm favourite compared to the two teams.
One win between them this season, Chloe. It feels like it's big for both in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, one matchup I kind of want to draw out is Jackie Newton on Harriet Jones. Like, Jackie Newton is a woman quietly about her business. Like, I think was really effective against Loughborough Lightning, and I think Harriet Jones struggled with the super shots that she was shooting against Thunder. Is that right, Lindsay? Like, I think she was missing quite a few. So I don't know if that's something Rhinos are going to look at and go, look, we can't afford you to be we need to assess how you shoot those super shots if you're going to miss them, and whether that's the right point to take them. But I think Jackie Newton is just such a little menace. And, that partnership with Alex Johnson is building. Fortunately, it's one that kind of was, there from the original 10, but not obviously in the positions that they wanted maybe to be in. Also Georgia Rowe on Jiva Mentor. It feels like Georgia Rowe, I think we have to be fair to Dragons as we are to everybody. Like, the recruitment of the super shot, like Dragons recruited not knowing there would be a super shot, but that's not to say that Georgia Rowe doesn't have a place, but it is about using her effectively and making sure that super shot strategy is in place. Oh my god, because Leeds will use it and they tend to use it quite a lot. So the defence will be key. I think it'll be interesting to see what Bloxham comes up with. But yeah, what do you reckon, Paul?
Yeah, I can't disagree with either of you there. I think there's kind of, both teams have made a lot of errors, and Lauren Palmer told us that when we spoke to her. It was like, they put a lot of things together, but they're making too many kind of mistakes. Dragons, and we alluded to this last week, had to make a huge bunch of changes to their defensive end. It's had a complete reshuffle. I actually thought it looked really good at times against Lightning. Alex Johnson, AJ, as Kerry Allman was calling her last week, having played alongside her for Oldham. Yeah, a lot of Oldham reference last week. I thought she's looked really well, and I think maybe many might have thought they could move Jackie back to play goalkeeper, but keeping her in the goal defence position has meant that they haven't had to make a whole bunch of changes, if that makes sense. Rather than 3, it's 2, if that makes sense. So I kind of half expected them to take a little bit more time to get that defensive end going, but they look good against Lightning. And I will be interested to see if they can now take that forward against a Rhinos attack end that has, at times, looked really threatening. The Harriet Jones question is interesting. I think a few weeks ago we said, are we going to see a little bit more of Sophie Egbaran? And we haven't seen a huge amount of her in the Super League so far this season, which again, in some ways, is sort of limiting your options when you've only got 10 to play with. So yeah, maybe, given what you pointed out about Harriet Jones, maybe we might see a little bit more at the attack in there, but limiting mistakes in a game where two teams who've made quite a lot of mistakes this season, I think, might tip the scales, and I would just favour Rhinos here, I think. But yeah, I think it will be close, this one. I think there's a bonus point in defeat up for grabs here.
Yeah, I think across all of these games, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right, actually.
Yeah.
Which might be crucial come the end of the season. I've spoke about the league table a few times.
Yeah, and I think it's great that there is a strive now to get points, even if you're losing. To get within 5 is good. I think we've had it in Premier League matches for a long time. 5 for a win, 3 for a draw. You get 2 for within I think it's within 5, and then one for getting more than half. And I'm like, why have we never had that at Super League? Because actually, how do lower end teams have that drive to try and keep up with everybody else? Even though you're in games where you're like, nah, we've been outplayed today, guys, but what can we bring away from this? Actually, if we keep going for our 1 point or 2 points, you're showing that actually on the board, yeah, don't discount us yet, because actually next year we might be a load better. And I think that's been a big benefit of keeping it better and actually tighter at the top. So when you have your neck and neck matches, when you've got your top of the table, which I think Thunder and Pulse will be a neck and neck game, whichever team is coming second, not last, but are going to walk away with the point as well. So and that, like you say, will be crucial when it leads up of actually who makes the top 4. It could be a combination of all those people who've actually played the game well and got within those score blinds when they've lost, not just let it blow out like some games have been, sadly.
It will. So yeah, I think a fascinating Easter weekend. Yeah, don't do anything with your Easter Saturday by the look of it. It's book yourself in for a load of Easter eggs and 3 back-to-back netball matches. Yeah, that's Saturday done and dusted. Look, I think before we wrap up, we wanted to chat to you a little bit more about next gen concept, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, Lindsay. I've watched a few games at different levels, like whether via streaming or I've been in attendance a couple of times. And I spoke to Jada Autumn and Hannah Passmore when I was down at Pulse Game. And those two are kind of the other side of the coin. We've spoken a little bit about development, and Hannah was really good about going from being a young player in a Super League team to now being an experienced player, bringing through a lot of younger heads. So as someone who works on the coaching side, how do you work on that balance? Because we've spoken about players aspiring to get into the Super League, but what also about those players who are kind of developing as well, because there's sort of young roses all over the league.
Yeah, and I think I go back to how we kind of address it, that this is a massive opportunity to play high level netball and, like you say, be on offer, be in your prime, high, perfect condition to be picked at any time. Like, we've mentioned how many injuries have happened and how many opportunities have arisen because of it. So actually, I think Next Gen has got a perfect place in the system. I wish we had more people able to come and support us and watch us. We actually had probably our better crowd at Worcester this year compared to some of our other matches. I know it's a big time scale between when our match starts and when the Super League match starts, and it is really hard for people to commit to that, but it would be great if we could draw the crowds that we're seeing. That Super League is booming at the moment. Like, we're filling up the whole bottom arena of the Copper Box, and it'd be great to get some of our girls experience to that. So actually, it's not a shock when you go and play Super League that you're like, oh my god, there's 3,000 people watching me. I've never had this. I've had normally my mum and the cat and the dog watching me. Like, do you know what I mean? It's you need that pressure, and that is what the league is got the potential to do to help people. And I think it is striking a balance of expectations. Like you said, people are coming away from a league that did have an opportunity for 120 athletes to have a contract to now only having 80 athletes. That's a lot of athletes to lose. Now, naturally, we had wastage, we had people retire, we had people step away, we had people married or change direction or whatever it is, but we still had a good 20 athletes that were really unfortunate not to get an opportunity or weren't able to move. They were still at uni and they can't move to places, or it just wasn't on the cards for them. And I do think Next Gen is that perfect place to balance it. Now, I'm not going to say you're going to get it right every time, but it is balancing those people of why they're in that league. And I think that's the really difficult bit, is be like, right, why are you actually here? Are you here to play the best netball that you can and to get any opportunity that you can get? Or are you here to get better as a player so that you are now looking forward to next season and being like, pick me, I'm ready, I've got this experience, I've had a great season at Next Gen. And, you always, it's so hard. Now, we were really lucky when I was about, you just kind of fuddled along. If you're lucky to get into England, great, you kind of then could keep that gravitas to get to most Super League teams. Whereas now I'm like, you need like a full-on roster. Like, people are getting agents now as well. I'm like, what is that? Like, what? I managed myself for 16 years. I think I did all right, but just that's the way the game's going. And nowadays you have to have a full portfolio. You're applying to places, or you don't just rock up to open trials. Like, I've been to loads of, when I was back in Mavericks, we used to have open trials. Like, people could come off the street and just come and trial for a Super League team. And that's what the Next Gen League is there for. It is a massive trial for these women to be able to say, look, I'm ready. I'm training at elite level. I'm a great athlete. This is my profile. This is what I've done. You know, these coaches are, you know, they're professional coaches. They're not watching these games. They are 100% watching at least their own franchise, not only other games as well, because, you know, they're thinking about the future. Like, you know, I love Jiva to pieces and I'd love her to play at 41 years old, but she probably won't. So you're going to need to be looking for some defenders. We've got half the defenders probably on at least a year out injuries. So, you know, there's a lot of people out there having to be like, right, next year, who have I got? Who's going to be the next Phoebe? Like, you know, who is going to be my next, you know, I don't know, like, yeah, just having that opportunity and making sure that the whole of Britain have those opportunities as well. Like, we are fortunate to have strong English players, but we do have strong Welsh players. We do have Scottish players that also are coming down. Like Emma Barry came and played against us for Panthers. You know, that's great that she's, you know, able to access that high level netball, and she played really well at the weekend. And I do think it's just got a really crucial point, and I hope England Netball invest in it well and continue it in the right direction, and don't just go, oh, well, we've done a good job, we've set something up really good, and you just carry on. It's like, no, we need to invest in this, we need to take it forward. And I hope that it will gather the momentum that, like, you know, like I said earlier, that Bath don't have a Super League team and people are still turning out to watch their next gen play. And it was a great atmosphere when we went down to the uni. Yeah, okay, it was one bandstand, but I'm like, all these people are coming because they love netball, not because they want to go and watch Serena Guthrie play or whoever. They're coming to watch netball and watch the future of netball, which is exactly what it is. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I think it's brilliant.
We've spoken a lot, and the reason I wanted to ask you about it is because we've kind of spoken whether it comes from the top down or from the bottom up, but actually that's such a good point, that in that middle bit, those who that next step for a lot of players, not everyone goes from kind of teenager to superstar. Like, you know, Gracie kind of is a bit of an outlier. Like, these come along in different sports at different times. You know, other players are still balancing careers and kind of all those things. This is going to be a transitional process, and I feel quite passionately as well that kind of middle tier over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, until we get to a point where the league is super strong or whatever it's going to be, is going to be crucial, because it's really going to be there that probably the stars of the league in the next sort of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years are kind of going to be built. I do think it's a really interesting concept, and I'm interested in the evolution of it.
Can I ask a quick question? Because you said something that was really interesting to me, Lindsay, about the fact that there's like the way you recruit for your next gen. Because I guess if you're a head coach, you're kind of recruiting for your team by extension, right? If you're by your Super League 10, because if this is your supply, certainly of your domestic players, let's call them, then you've got to, and you're only limited to 10 in your own team, so you've got to think like, okay, well, I've got this kind of goalkeeper, so I need this kind of goal defense, and I need then to have a second goal defense that does that. What have I got underneath to support that if that kind of goes down? Like, is that kind of thinking going into the next gen recruitment? Am I being a bit too like, this is with the string on the wall?
No, I don't think it is. I think if their franchise directors and their head coaches have got their head screwed on, that would be an underlying thing, especially because you're down to 10 players and we're not got the luxury of SNN where you have that 11th player who is contracted but just doesn't play. So you automatically have that person you draw into the team. And again, like, players get injured, they get pregnant, they move countries, like, you know, people leave, people get opportunities elsewhere. And I think head coaches, franchise directors would be stupid not to make sure that their next gen team is the best option that they have. Now, this year's unique and the fact that it is the starting one, so some franchises haven't necessarily put all of their eggs in one basket with their under 23s. Some have played the game with their under 19s and, you know, maybe kept 1 or 2 players back that I would have been like, oh, no, they need to be playing next gen, but have perhaps trained with them or done whatever. And I do think, again, you need to be thinking about what you're offering and what you've got on your backup, but you've got to make it a draw for people as well, because, you know, if you live, let's say, in Buckinghamshire, or you live in Nottingham, you know, you've got so many teams available to you. Your choice of next gen is crucial, and actually players are having to make their allegiances far more than I'd say they have done in the past. Whereas normally you just rock up to whoever's team's closest to you. Actually, I know girls who are thinking, I think I've got a better bet at Nottingham because Loughborough are all sewn up or they're all uni girls. So actually, I'm better off to go to Nottingham. And you've got others going, actually, I can commute to Worcester, I can commute to Birmingham. And actually, that's quite easy for me to get to. It's better for me to be here rather than just going, oh, well, I live here, so I'll just pay for my local team or my local franchise. Actually, you can see young women thinking about what their career path is and where they need to go. And you can see head coach recruiting being like, oh, you want to go to uni? Okay, well, I can get you into this place. So, why don't you pop on down to us and we'll look after you for the next 3 years. And, oh, look at this. There's a Super League franchise at the end of it. So I think there is a lot more calculations than people take credit for. And if they're not, then they're missing a trick because netball is fickle and, does not, well, some of us it seems to last forever, but not for everybody. So you've got to keep your toes on it. And I think also now having 10 players, you need to find those gems that are versatile. So I don't know if you've agreed with this, Chloe and Paul, in previous rounds, but those players who can show they can play multiple positions are far more crucial to that 10 than those who are just your goalkeeper or goal shooter or only play wing attack. Like everyone is having to make sure they've got strings to their bows. And I do think that's how you can see the difference between teams that play their 10 and teams that only play 8 or maybe a 9th player if you're lucky or if there's been an injury. And I think that's a telltale sign of, again, how well have you recruited? Have you thought about the holistic approach of what your 10 is? Are you replacing people for like, or actually are you making an impact? Are you thinking about what you're putting onto court to make an impact, to get that win or to get that point or to do whatever? And all teams can do that. That doesn't, even if you're losing a game, you might be chucking someone on to be like, right, we need to get within 5 because we need to make top 4. So I just think, none of these women and people involved in netball are silly billies. And if they are hiding it well because, there's a lot of investment. And I do hope, like you say, they are going to take this seriously. And England netball have a terrible point of going, oh, well, that was great. And just, cruising on to something else and not actually thinking, right, okay, next year, how are we going to build on this? How are we going to make it better? And I do hope that we don't introduce the super shot in next gen. I don't think it's the right move. I do think we need to keep it as netball and then move on. I do think we need to keep with 12 players as well. Like we've got women who are at school, at uni, it can't commit. We're not paying these people either. Like they're not paid to play next gen. So I do think we need to keep bigger squads for that purpose and to allow people to have opportunities. 10 is difficult. Like 10 is you're picking people, if you're fortunate to be the next Gracie Smith where you get picked up and Izzy Phillips, who it was last year, great. But that doesn't happen to everyone. That's the exception, not the rule. So I do think it's a next gen is needed for people to be exposed and to get their opportunities because it's very limited now at the top of the circle, top of the triangle, as you would say.
It's another specialist episode. We've got the England throwback episode, and now we've got a specialist next gen episode as well. We've kind of created a whole new genre of our podcast. Lindsay, look, listen, it's been brilliant. It's been a fascinating listen to get your thoughts on the league so far and kind of where things are at, but kind of we do have to draw a conclusion to ourselves at some point, as we've all kind of said. We love a chat in netball, but obviously when we kind of got 4 games to preview and 4 games to review, there's lots to chat about. So thank you for your time, first of all, and we'll probably get you on again before the season's out if you're up for it. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I'll be back. I love a good chat. Teachers, we love the sound of their own voice. I've got no one to teach at the moment, so it's nice for people to listen and actually people who interact back. So I'm keen.
We need to come up with some way to tie sort of like religion to netball and do something funny there. I'm sure there's something we're missing.
I'm sure I missed the trick with the Easter feast bit as well. I definitely reflected.
I should have been smarter with that, being like, roll away the tomb and see who's like here for a surprise or whatever, or coming back from the dead. Maybe it should have been better with dragons being like who
resurrection.
Yeah. Right, listen, we'll take off. Thank you to everybody for listening. As usual, the usual feeds, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, kind of everywhere you can get us. We'll have a full Vic Burgess interview if you've kind of skipped through the teaser to that part, just to get to the good stuff of the previews. You can listen to Vic in full on the feed. And as I say all the time, we're really grateful to you for your support. So when you can rate us, review us and subscribe to us, it really helps because we're blown away. Numbers, Chloe, we've had loads of people listen to us, haven't we?
Yeah, we're now over 11,000. So, given that sort of started about 5.5, 6 weeks ago, thank you,
And a
everybody.
statement from Sky as well. So we are moving this. The movement is moving. That's the way we're going to leave it.
Powerful people.
Something of a moment, right? That was the.
Yeah, that's what you said. Yeah, that's what you said. We'll see you next time.